Saul, the adversary of the way, blind in Damascus. Saul, the instigator of Stephen's stoning, the one who breathed threats against Jesus' people, now in Damascus in a safe house. Is this a bluff? Could it be a trick? Could this be a game concocted by the enemies of Jesus? How could a man who was so feared now be so helpless? Anxiety and trepidation came with the news. Saul breeds terror. He spares no mercy. He holds the coat of the gang who killed Stephen. He barks instructions during the stoning. He is a criminal, a gangster of the first order, a mercenary who unleashed his dogs of prey. Moreover, he hurts, maims, and jails believers. He writes letters, sets boundaries, and dispatches garrisons to arrest them. He leaves no stone unturned to prevent this ragtag group from spreading the good news about a man named Jesus. Is all of this talk about Saul being blind just a ploy? Is this a blind man's bluff to entice more slaughter? Is it true? Can anybody believe this report? Is Saul really blind? Or is this a bluff? All reports indicate that after breathing threats against his followers and after planning to lay traps for them throughout the city of Damascus, Saul is literally knocked off his high horse. It seems that nothing can stop this man. Nothing deters him from annihilating the friends of Jesus. But as he is traveling to Damascus, he meets the risen Lord. He has a close encounter of the first kind that knocks him to the ground. Maybe Jesus knows that of the gang of men who travel with Saul, he has to waylay the leader. To get the attention of the others, he has to stop the toughest of the lot. So the story unfolds. This man, Saul, is surprised on the road, knocked to the canvas, given a standing 8 count. When he gets up, he is led to Damascus without sight. His men are astonished. Paul has been struck down. His gang, numb with the encounter, fear for their lives. The tables are turned. The persecutors have become the persecuted. The routers, the routed. The hounded, the hounders. The waylaying is real. His blindness is not a bluff. Sometimes in our misdirected practices, though not quite as ambitious as persecution, I suspect, do our misdirected practices lead to spiritual ambush? Is that too strong? Do we yearn for this kind of near cataclysmic upheaval that knocks us off a high horse and reorders our steps? Scene 2. Saul is taken to a house on a street called Straight. He's not taken to Jump Street. He isn't taken to the front street. He's taken to a house on Straight Street so that he can think about his ways and get straight with God. Biblical pun intended. Maybe Paul thinks then about what he did and why he did it to the followers of the way. So long as he had eyes, he could see what he was doing, plan for what he was doing, and look into the eyes of the men who did the doing. So long as he had eyes, he could survey the land, take note of the hideouts, and have command of his prey like an eagle in flight. Can you see them? Stern eyes, haughty eyes, patronizing and condescending eyes, disdainful eyes, eyes with no mercy or compassion, eyes without tears or tenderness, cold, unrelenting eyes. But now the sight is gone. Now he can't see where he is or where he is going or why he is there. Now he is at a house on a street called Straight. Now 3 days without food, water. Now his crooked ways are made straight, his rough edges are made plain, his haughty ways are brought low. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Do you not know who I am? I am the one who formed you in your mother's womb. I am the one who put food on your table, clothes on your back. I am the one who gave you an education. I am the one who raised you up in a prosperous family. I am the one who commissioned you to be a tent maker and gave you the health to make a living despite your thorn. I am the one who gifted your mind and loved you through the rough times. I am the one who gave you everything you have. And so why do you persecute me? The 3 days on the street called Straight transform Paul. In blindness, he gains more sight and insight than in a lifetime. He can look back to see the error of his ways, look inside to search his motives, and then look to the future, imagining a new path. That he is on a street called Straight is not a bluff, it is not a rumor, it is not a trick or a trap. He is really in a place where the crooked things are made straight in order to serve rather than persecute. You know, sometimes our own misdirected practices, though not as ambitious as persecution, I would hope, lead to spiritual ambush. Is that too strong? Do we yearn for this near cataclysmic upheaval that knocks us off a high place and reorders our steps? Scene 3, double vision. I love this. As Saul loses sight, Ananias gains a vision. And then Saul has a vision that Ananias will restore sight. Cool. It is the promise of Communitas, the deepest kind of connection. Ananias, reluctant to believe that this persecutor is so helpless, is invited to pray for Paul with the laying on of hands. Crossing a threshold of possibility and blessed by the Spirit, Ananias anoints Saul, and immediately the barriers fall from his eyes. Saul is baptized and fed to be made strong. And on the other side of baptism, he is called Paul, the one who risks thresholds of possibility again and again in the adventure of serving. It's not a blind man's bluff. No longer an ally of evil. Paul is an advocate, a storyteller, a missionary of the way of Jesus. We are tracking the adventures of Communitas through the book of Acts. Communitas is that deep, meaningful community in which God lives in us and all around us. And there is this constant invitation to step over a threshold, to risk a possibility, because we are God's mission in the world. We are the hands and feet of God in the world to each other and to our neighbors. What if we, like Paul, were willing to learn from failures, from changes in direction? What if it is in the struggle that we find our heart? What if we let community in so that community becomes possible? Damascus Road experiences. Many of us can tell that story to our deepest communitas. My own Damascus Road Communitas learning moment was anger-based and anger-fed. Late in my 20s, after nearly a decade together, my marriage failed. My husband and I had tried so hard to get it right. We worked hard. We volunteered at the church and throughout the community. We followed all the rules in the Bible. So why did we have such difficulty? Why didn't we get that Cinderella and Prince Charming blessing? Why couldn't we have children? I was so angry at God for what I called the great lie. And it was so ironic and seemed just like another cruel joke that during this time I was gifted with a scholarship for seminary studies. How could I prepare for a new vocation when I was convinced that God had lied to me and religion had turned its back? So for nearly 5 years, I was silent. As I studied the Bible and ethics and spirituality and leadership. And though most of my prayers were for show and were perfunctory, I prayed one prayer with genuine fervor. Go ahead, God. Abandon me. Leave me bereft. That's what you do. That's who you are. And what made me even angrier than the great lie was the sense that I simply couldn't get rid of that presence. Emmanuel, God with us. This is not always such good news when one is angry. When that spirit seems to hover just out of sight, for me, it was just over my right shoulder, and it would not leave me alone. My road to Damascus was a walking path around Lake Junaluska in the mountains of western North Carolina. I was at a conference for students considering ordination. Oh my, what a hypocrite I was. As I was walking, my anger simply overflowed. I stopped by the rose garden on that path, ready to have it out for one last time. Okay, Jesus, why don't you just deal with me face to face? I'm fed up with chasing you. I am fed up with you hanging around. Why won't you just leave me? And so I started to chase that presence over my shoulder, around and around and around and around, until I could stand no more. I was so dizzy chasing the presence that I fell down on the path. And the word of Isaiah came to me. Why won't I leave you? Because you are precious in my eyes. I honor you, and I love you. It was no bluff. I laughed. I just lay down on that path and I laughed and laughed and laughed till I cried. One of my school friends sitting in the coffee shop saw me fall. She ran out to me, of course, thinking that she had to call the ambulance. She was stunned to hear me laughing. Susan, I said, I cannot resist anymore. Do you have time for a story? I'll buy the coffee. For I was blind, and now I see. I think I'm going to have to say yes. Sometimes our misdirected practices, though not as ambitious as persecution, I would hope, lead to spiritual ambush. Is that too strong? Do we yearn for the kind of near cataclysmic upheaval that topples us from a high horse and redirects our steps? Yes. Faith is not about a belief in new life. Faith is about the experience of new life. The relationships that transform is with a person named Jesus, not with the books or the events or the doctrines or the rituals about him. And the space out of which we make sense of that relationship and its meaning for our life is Communitas. Will you pray with me? Oh God, it's not a blind man's bluff. Give us your eyes. Even for just 1 second, give us your eyes. Give us your eyes so that we can see.